Hey guys, it's Vin. Welcome to our stream today. I'm really happy to have you guys here where we talk about the, DD43 rails along with Chairmanwon's Glock 48 43X frame. So I'll go ahead and I'll bring in our guests and let them introduce themselves.
Hey, howdy boys. Good to be here with you, Vin.
Sweet. Thanks for coming here, dude. You got any socials and stuff you want to plug?
Nah. You people know where to find me. Just excited this 43X stuff is finally coming out. People have been mean on the internet to me about it, waiting for it to come out. So where is it? Where is it? Hey, what are you doing?
I was gonna say I thought people were like harassing you for like files and stuff, being like, hey, RC Facey, like, when are you gonna drop?
Vin, I'm being harassed on the internet here, man. You know, we got to drop these files. This is internet harassment.
Oh my goodness! All right, next here is Obvious Rails.
Hello, how's it going? Glad to be here.
Sweet. Glad to have you guys on here. And hello, everyone in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on the chat log on YouTube. So if you have any questions, just feel free to pose them in the chat below. So I guess let's go ahead and we'll start with some ground rules here on the stream. These in front of me are not being touched. They're only being displayed, right? If I do have to disassemble them, I'll pause my video stream. I'll take them apart and show you inside, but I don't think we have to because I have little parts with cells here, little metal pieces, along as with some sample frames. So I guess we'll go ahead and we'll start. See, oh, I printed it. Says, "What up, Steve? 3D Arms." Hey. So, Chairman, question for you.
I'm still getting the live chat going. Hey, so it's great.
Yeah. I think your audio quality is.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Is he sounding wobbly for you, Aves?
Yeah, he does.
He does.
Hold on. Let me just check my internet real quick. Make sure I'm good.
Cool. So while he does that, I'll go ahead and I'll plug our rail vendor here. Aves Rails makes these DD43 spec. Hey, say something, Chairman.
Hey, can you hear me?
Still wobble going on. You want to connect it, disconnect and reconnect?
Yep, there he goes.
I'll plug our rail vendor here really quick. These DD43 rails you can use for not only the Glock 43 now, but you can also use them for the 43X and 48 frames, as well as the Glock 42 beta that's still happening right now. The Glock 48 frame here is a little experiment that I did based on Chairmanwon's model. It's not released yet, but the red frame here that you see for the 43X, that's already released. In fact, you can actually go online and grab them right now. They're actually live right now on the catalog. So you guys know where to find the catalog. I can't post a link in the comments, obviously, but you can find the catalog. You'll find the 43X frames have been released. Cool. All right, and Chairman's back. Let's see if we get back in here.
Hey, so I dropped my video quality a bit for better bandwidth. Can you hear me better now?
Oh yeah, much better.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'm on that Yeehaw Mountain Man internet, so not sure what's on there.
Get the 5G to activate 5G cell service from your vaccine or something.
yeah. You know they're just coming for me with my my COVID having ass.
With that radiating cell service personality, right? So I just mentioned to our viewers that our frame is released and the rails can be bought off of avisrails.com. So I guess I'll pose a question now to Chairman. What was your, favorite part of designing the 43X, and how did you make it?
You know, I mean, not to suck your little Asian ego, but it was just, being able to finally do a project with you, man. You know, I know we had kind of been talking and been in the same circle for a little bit, but actually getting able to really do a new frame and kind of be involved with a mainline DD release and work with you on it. That was super fun and I was kind of just making it because I wanted a 43X and I didn't really realize that what I was working on was like gonna be the kind of like main release for it. So that was a nice surprise. But really, I mean, yeah, it was just fun working with you and actually, doing a DD release. Like that was super cool.
Gotcha. So Chairman also has you have other DD releases too. This wasn't your first one. You have your Stipple Mega Pack that's also dropped in the catalog too. Right?
Yeah, I don't know, but that was just kind of like a solo project that kind of just like got hosted on that just kind of got hosted on catalog. That I wouldn't really call that like that wasn't like a collaborative thing. And yeah, this totally was, like working off your excellent 43 model and then just like going from there. Yeah, and I mean, so yeah, it was just really an extension of like the stuff that I wanted to do with the 43, like, just bringing different ergos into it, just making it kind of a little more SIG-like, and then just kind of extending that out to the 43X, like kind of like starting from scratch on the ergos for this stuff was super fun, because like, if you look at the like Gigapack block stuff, that's very much like taking kind of like a standard block and cutting into it. So the 43, the 43X, and the V3 stuff I'm working on now is definitely like more of a like, okay, let's like go from the ground up and like build a new lock frame with like the ergos that I think it should have had from the start. And yeah, I mean, it's just like, it's super fun. Like, I'm happy we have single stack stuff now. And I definitely learned a lot, doing the 43 and the 43X.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see here. So, I guess what challenges did you run into creating your 43X frame, if I can ask? I'm doing an adjustment really quick.
I mean, anything is challenging in the sense that like you have a lot of, I like spending a lot of time on my models. Having something where we didn't really know what the proper specifications were, especially for that. Like, I'd say the trickiest thing was that spring for the because like the like the slide stop, like the slide release. For some reason, they used a different spring size between the 43 and the 43X, and I absolutely.
Chairman, I think you cut out just there. Okay, so I think he got disconnected.
It's that internet again.
Yeah. So I guess to finish the thought of what Chairman was saying, between the 43 and 42 and the 43X, they all use a different slide lock, ever so slightly different. And between the three of them, they use three different springs. The little return spring inside the slide lock itself that sits in front or inside the locking block. Oh, excuse me. So on the 43X and 48, it's thicker, and there obviously was a slight little fitment and compatibility issue, and we diagnosed, well, why isn't this like working? And we figured, oh wait, the springs are thick, so we had to adjust the geometry inside the frame to accommodate that larger spring. And once that was completed, it was just continuing work from there and identifying other oddities and conflicting geometry too. So I'm actually going to pause my stream a little bit and take out this magazine in front of this 48 here. So hit stop cam, and I'll pick up the frame here, drop the mag, put the frame back down. Oh, and all right, nice job, Ben. So like everything here is like precariously on rods and stilts. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it down. I don't care. So for example, working on something like the shield arms mag, initially the shield arms mag was not compatible with the that's too tight of a frame. Initially, the shield arms mag was not compatible with the frame because when you insert it, what's that little thing called, that extension on the mag well, where it's like the funnel of sorts, was I guess too shallow for the base plate of the shield arms mag to go in all the way. So when you would insert the mag, there'd be just a little bit of, material of the magazine that you can see through the frame, and it's really hard to show here on camera because I'm sitting so far away. But with that space right there, it made it so that the magazine release could not close on the knife all the way, and it would stick out, etc. So between all the different iterations of the frame and such, we really want to dial in and get a compatible, widely compatible frame working for the 43X and 48 parts kits. So here's my next question to Ace now. What part of manufacturing these rails would you want your viewers to know?
I guess the biggest thing with manufacturing a rail spec like this, that it really exists outside of the world of traditional firearms. It really is it's a component that you cannot get in the OEM Glock frame. You can't get it out. So we've spent a lot of time perfecting the both the geometry of the actual components so that they fit perfectly in the frame. They fit all of the samples that we could find for internal components that would go in the frame. They're the perfect in-between ground that should work with almost everything. And to couple with that, we've spent a lot of time perfecting a very repeatable process. So the rails are designed in a way that they're easy enough to manufacture, that they always come out as perfect as they possibly could. A lot of time has been spent on that repeatability so that every time we make rails, they come out to the same spec and they assemble as easy as they did for the developers when they were designing the frame, assuming you have calibrated printer. We've pretty much removed every variable except for the printer. We've made a rail system that accommodates various different parts aftermarket. I remember when we first started developing the 43 frame a couple of years ago, I think now, right?
I think
about a year.
Close to a year ago, yeah.
Yeah, it's been about a year now.
It feels like a couple of years though.
We had a lot of problems with aftermarket parts. I remember the first parts kit that Vin had. What was it? A Glock store or something like that.
Yeah.
It was completely different than the OEM 43 that I took apart to get samples. So a lot of time has been spent taking samples of what the traditional industry has created to get it to work with our own standard, which most people aren't aware, but it's a monumental project. It's a big task to undertake, especially for a startup and developers who have full-time jobs. And
Sorry.
Hey, it's all right.
Sorry, I'm gainfully employed. I think I just want to, iterate or emphasize what Aves is saying. When you design a spec like this, something that will be used and shared between many other developers and users, a lot of the effort into making sure that it's a sound specification is really important. There's no room for, putting in half the effort to making a spec, because then you might get into compounding issues when you stack all sorts of variables and design remixes and such on top of each other. You want the spec to be the baseline, the known good specification that can always be relied upon, including tolerances, dimensionality, etc. So to reiterate, it is a massive undertaking. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. It's a massive undertaking for the scope of, are you making a sound product? Are you making a sound item that will be used by many people and entrusting their, we'll be able to trust what you're making. It's grand in that sense as well, as much as it is grand in the sense of finding out how to manufacture it. I know that when I first started designing this, I was making a lot of unmachinable geometry, right? And thanks to working with manufacturers like Avis, I got to learn what is manufacturable and what isn't manufacturable. How to make geometry that can be machined from small batches to at scale production. And so I think that these are, I say, it's been quite an eye-opening experience working with these little guys and little parts as such.
They're, I guess my favorite way to put it is that they're as perfect as they can be. They're not Glock perfection, but they're our perfection. They're as perfect as they can be for the application. So
sweet. Oh, and I think Chairman's back.
Hey, sorry about that. I moved to a place where I've just had good internet all weekend. All week. I had tried to put myself in like the far back corner, so I was like away from my family and the noise. But apparently that was a little too far for the router. So my apologies if you hear my family moving around. We're all sharing a little log cabin in the woods for quarantine. But I think here at least I will have internet.
Sweet. All right. So, Chairman, we just went through sharing the specifications about the DD43 parts with the viewers. What, I guess let me think of a question to ask you about your frame. Was there any part that was hard for you to capture the geometry of?
The really hard part of this project was actually the remix for your like 43 frame. So this all started with the 4365 frame. So that was a pain because the SIG 365 geometry is just like black magic. Like I have no idea why it works. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what the secret sauce is there, and I couldn't figure it out. So I actually took a 365 frame and like modeled the 365 first, and then took that and like superimposed it on the 43 frame to like do the 4365. So my 43X was an extension of that 4365 thing. It's just a lengthened version, obviously got a little fatter, but like it was really, just taking that geometry and like extending it out to be more of a SIG 43 or 365 XL type frame geometry. So that's really where the tricky part was just getting that initial like 43X remix figured out. 43 remix figured out. Extending it to the X was relatively simple. Getting those base ergos was definitely hard because like single stack, very small, like in your hand stuff is very different from double stack ergos. And I just didn't even really know where to start.
I guess another question for you then. And by 365, you mean the 365 ergos, right?
Yeah.
Have you released a 365 magazine frame for the 43?
Okay, no, because it would need a custom slide stop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's a company that tried to make a Glock 43X frame that took 365. A Glock 43 frame that took 365 mags, and it uses it uses a SIG style mag release, but the custom part that couldn't be printed is that slide stop. So if they ever bring their product to market, they'll obviously have to bring that slide stop to market. In which case, I'll totally make the frame. But at the moment, I just don't see the point in making that frame because, I mean, Aves or, Riptide or someone like that could make a part for it, but it would be so niche that I just don't think. I just don't think that the demand would be there to actually make sense to tool up for the custom part you would need to like make that project work.
Gotcha. I think small niche runs could probably.
Well, also, I don't think it's going to be a big deal in like a month or so, because Shield Arms is coming out with a 9-round flush fit for the 43. So, yeah,
9 rounds. That's
yeah.
Because the 43 I recall only holds 6 right now.
Yeah.
Oh.
It might be a hair not flush, but it's like it's almost flush.
Right. Interesting.
Okay. So I mean that plus my 4365 frame. I mean I don't see the point of moving to a whole different. Yeah. So Evil SD. What I'm saying is I totally would, but it would require a custom metal part that I can't get made. So.
Gotcha. Okay. You got my noggin jogging now.
Yeah, I mean,
it also says Brownells has them listed in stock. The Shield Arms.
Oh. Okay.
I guess your boy's going to Brownells after this.
Yeah, I'll have to buy some. Oh, so yeah, it does have a little pinky extension. I don't know. We'll see.
Pinky extensions are common though, which is like a little fin of sorts in the bottom.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens with it. I mean, if Vestreppen, I think is the name of the company, if they end up releasing their 43 frame, I'll definitely make a printable version that uses their slide stop. It's just a matter of I'm not going to make a frame that requires a metal part that like straight up doesn't exist, you know?
Right. Well, I mean, these didn't exist, so.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Okay, fair enough. I am actually doing that with the V3 because I started that before there was any there's like no Gen 5 rails that I need for my V3. I was just like, all right, well, worst case scenario, we'll just I'll make a jig to modify some existing rails and include it with the files, whatever, you know.
All right. Okay, coolio. There was a question I wanted to ask you about the frame. Thin geometries. So this is one of the few frames where I can wrap my hand around and have my index finger and thumb touch. Did you run into any issues with say thin walls or thin geometry?
Yeah, a ton. So when the black science of block ergos is there are certain parts where you want to go as thin as you possibly can. Essentially where your finger webbing interacts with the frame and, where you wrap around, your trigger finger, thumb to mag release, all of those parts you want to basically go as thin as you can. And, I'm sure you're aware that Solid Edge, Solidworks, Fusion can report valid geometry that's less than, what a printer will actually slice. So what I do constantly when I'm working on the very thin parts is I'll make a little change to the feature, save it as an STL, slice it in Cura, see, I have pinholes, back it out a fraction of a millimeter, and just keep going until I'm at least getting a full wall on the thinnest parts. So I mean, all of my frames, including the V2 stuff, the stuff in the Gigapack, there's areas that are only one wall when printed. They're small areas, and they're not in places that affect, where it's like a one house, the one house Shay, okay, where's it going to break first? You're going to break around pinholes before you break around any of those parts. So while it might seem you're taking a 3D printed frame and you're making it weaker just to get good ergos, well, that's not really the case. You're not going to break the frame in the parts that I'm making it weaker. You can make it really weak there. It doesn't matter. You're still going to bust pinholes first. So I don't see any downside to having very thin areas. And I mean, did you print the V3 test file that I sent you, Ben?
Yeah, I think I actually have it right here behind me. You okay if we show it on stream?
Oh yeah. It's floating out there, but I mean, there's very thin parts of that, Yeah.
It's like under here where the under the trigger guard. What else? This is a botched print because it lifted up.
No, but like look like in the magwell, like you can see where the light shines through up there. Yeah.
Right. Oh yeah, he's talking about the scallop thing here, right? Where
Yeah, very thin, extremely thin.
Yeah, I can press through that.
Yeah, you can bust through it on draft, like normal PLA prints. You can squeeze that and just bust through it. You can't do it on PLA Plus. It's strong enough on PLA Plus, but yeah, it's super thin. That's where you find the space to fit ergos. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And I see you have a custom mag release design here too, right?
Yeah. So that's the V3 gets away with like really good ergos by using a custom mag release for a much higher grip, and then going Gen 5 in the back because the Gen 5 trigger shoe is literally smaller. There's more area you can fit for the palm of your hand, and I mean it pays off. Like I mean that frame feels amazing for a double stack lock.
Gotcha. Okay, so while we're talking about that frame, do you have any like anticipated trials or demos or beta coming up for it?
Yeah, I mean, so I kicked the kind of like ergo proof files out to you, Ivan, PSR, some people who print a lot of my stuff just like on Twitter and Instagram. Hoffman, people like that, just to be like, okay, like, hey, what's working, what's not working, ergo wise. They said I have, pages and pages of, slight ergo modifications to make. And then, yeah, I mean, once rails for it are at least like somewhat available, I'll, it's a Glock. So once it's out and like PA and like people have built it a few times successfully, I'll probably just release it without sending it through like an exhaustive testing regime, just because I mean at the end of the day it is still just a Glock.
Right, it's based off a proven spec already.
Yeah, so I doubt, like right now I'd say it's in like alpha, and I'm kicking it out to just a few people just to like make significant improvements. But once it's there, I mean, I'm not gonna do like a long beta for it. Once parts are available, I'm just probably gonna send it out there.
Cool, yeah. Okay.
Will the single walls be fixed in V3? I'm not sure what you're talking about. There shouldn't be any places in the V3 where there's the thinnest walls in V3 should be at least double wall.
I think there aren't any single walls in your V2, right?
I think they might be talking about on the back of the grip where the rear rail pokes through. If you don't have the detect thin walls turned on in Kira, it kind of creates a
you
smooth wall.
You know what I'm talking about? Right?
It's possible to get pinholes back there on the V2.
Yeah. That might be what they're talking about, but that's not a single wall condition. That's just a slicer thing.
Yeah. So on the V3, there's enough like extra room back there that the thickness like right at the corner there is a little bit more than the V2. So even without detect thin wall on, you won't get any pinholes on the V3 back there.
Gotcha. Okay. Sweet. Savendi asks, what were the issues between 42 and 43? So Savendi, the 42 is you're talking about the 380 model, right? That's the one I have sitting in front of me right here. I guess that's more of a me question. The issue that we're running into right now with the beta is that when the gun goes to quote unquote reset, it resets slightly out of battery, especially with a round inside it. So when you go to pull the trigger, the slide pulls back ever so slightly, which leads me to think that I have an issue going on with where I'm placing the rear rails, because the trigger bar is much shorter lengthwise. between the trigger and where it inserts into the fire control. So that's a current quirk. Trying to diagnose and fix right now. It's gonna be a minute. 380 is hard to come by, so I'm not going to have to actually sit down and play with it. So unfortunately,
that's just a matter of the case length being shorter on the 380, so it has different trigger bar geometry, and it's just like not a complete one-to-one between the 42 and the 43.
Correct. The difference really is the distance between, because obviously the magazine is slightly wider
yeah.
than thicker. So just figuring out where the perfect spot to put that rear rail pin. Does that make sense? Saveni also asks, obvious, how hard has tooling been so far?
The tooling hasn't been too bad because we already make thousands and thousands of the V2 17, 19, 26. So we already have a lot of experience with making a lot of components. It's really just been adapting to a slightly smaller component. The rear rails in the 43 are actually harder to bend than on the 19, the double stack blocks, just by the nature of that top rail portion being so much shorter. The front rails, we machine them right here in house, and it's just a smaller component. Again, harder to hang on to, takes a little bit longer to machine. Ironically, since it is smaller, it takes longer to make. But that's just due to the nature of it being such a small part and there not being a lot of material to hold on to. But it's nothing we haven't encountered before. And then I think somebody else asked if this was a Haas VF, and it is indeed. If there wasn't a bunch of tools, it's a VF1. So, and then there's a mini mill in here too, and we got a couple new machines coming. We have an army of 3D printers to make our holders, a bunch of workstations. We have a SLS printer on the way as well that we're going to be doing some stuff with in the future. So yeah, we're stuff in here.
So Serenity, like you're kind of asking about like, do we make stuff that's cost effective for people to actually make, or I'm just trying to quite understand what you mean there. That's more of like, is this like an obvious question where it's like
I think what he's asking is
for anybody.
I think the question he's asking is, when you make a frame design, do you focus on?
Well, no, I designed for Glock. Like that's one of the least cost-effective platforms out there if you want to 3D print a handgun. I stick with Glock because I like spending a lot of time on individual models, and I fell into like the first handgun I did was kind of like more Vin bait, the Ruger P95 stuff. And, I spent so much time on that. And then the parts kits dried up and it was like heartbreaking because it's like, oh my God, all of my hard work. So for me, it's just about making stuff. Like, I like making stuff that I like. Like, that's the priority. Like, I make this Glock stuff because I want those Glocks. And I think that I can do the best job of making Glocks that I want. And the fact that like people like them and it's a popular design is great, but it's not like my motivation. Like I did the little Space Mini the other day just because like someone sent me a 26 slide that was really cool and I wanted a new frame for it. So it's like, okay, well, I want a new 26 frame. I'm me. Let me make a new 26 frame that I like, So, I mean, like the people doing, there's people. This is such a big community that we have designers who are working on, you know, wildly over-engineered things that aren't cost-effective. I mean, King Cobra comes to mind. We have people working on things that are simple and cost-effective, like the Harlot. You know, we have people working on parts kits builds for everything from, you know, brand new, you know, high-tech 5.7s to fucking high points. Like, there's room in the community for me to do like stupid industrial design nerd, like basically like Glock wanking, and you know, there's room. The nice thing is there's room for all of that stuff, and each one of those things kind of attracts a different type of person to the community. Like, you know, the low point isn't going to pull in like a P80 Ralph style guy, but like, you know, my type of stuff isn't going to like pull in, you know, Australians and Canadians who like want to build FGC 9s type stuff. Like, I don't know. It's just like I don't think any one person really has to like prioritize like that.
You wouldn't think that, judging by the emails asking why I don't ship to Australia, Canada. You do attract their attention, actually.
So
yeah, Canadians get real mad. Like, the Canadian government got real. So that when they announced that joint task force, man, I just got like, it went from like my normal Fed posts to every single glowy message I got for like 3 weeks was Canadian. Like, it was absolutely not it. I don't even know if I could like go into Canada at the moment. Like, I'm actually really curious what would happen if I tried to cross the border.
hell, I think we'd have problems probably going into New Jersey. Like, just saying, I don't know. I guess to emphasize that point too that Chairman was making, 3D printed guns have a very wide appeal to all sorts of niches and different groups of people. Like you said, people who live in places where parts are super accessible, commercial off the shelf, or places where parts are very restricted, have to be homemade. It seems like that there's something for everyone from every, I guess, national background or, you know, financial background too. You know, something really cheap would be like the Low Point or the SW9,
the Harlot, you know.
Yeah, Harlot or
Well,
know,
there's even low cost parts kit builds. I mean, there's still a lot of parts that show up on Gunbroker and various places. The Glocks just happen to be the middle ground.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think Glocks like are a valuable build because they're so accessible. You only have to print one part, and the fitment actually isn't that precise. Like, Glocks are pretty sloppy. You can get away. You can get away with a lot of mistakes in Glock design. Like, I mean, like, for the V3, like, I actually like push stuff around like by whole, like, in some cases like 0.5 millimeter from where like it probably should be, just to like accommodate ergos, and like it works fine. I don't know, like you get a lot of leeway in Glock. It's something that's very accessible for Americans. Like, it's a lot of people's first builds. Like, I think it is valuable for bringing people in. As far as like the mission statement of, you know, Source Cad goes, obviously it's irrelevant. It's not even, you know, semi-important. But, you know, hey, if it gets people 3D printing, gets 3D printers in people's hands, and gets people interested in defending like our right to 3D print stuff, because, you know, people say like, oh, okay, you know, well, you know, fuck the government, if they ban it, I'm doing it anyway. Well, there's a reason that America is like the focal point for global 3D printed design, because we can do this stuff legally. Like, people might be printing Harlots by the buckload in Flavellas in Brazil. They're not developing them there.
Gotcha. Okay. I got another question here for you. So I was getting parts to do my P80 43 frame. What proprietary 43X parts do I need to buy for this frame so I don't have my 43? Mag release and the magazines, and also your slide lock, and think that's it.
Well, if he was doing a P80, you also need a locking block and obviously the rails from Aves.
Yes.
But yeah, those are the only parts that are different are the magazine and the slide stop. Everything else is the same between the 43 and the 43X.
And so the P80 version or the SS80 rails that Chairman was talking about for Evo SD is this proprietary casted locking block rail combo thing here. These have sort of been hit or miss on builds, but one of the main reasons why we designed a specification was so that it could be made by anyone at home and I guess open sourceable, and I guess how do I say you have the liberty to make it yourself.
Well, yeah, I mean, so like it's a super common question, on Twitter is like, okay, like why don't you guys just design stuff that only uses the commercial off-the-shelf rails that already exist? Well, P80s are going away. Who knows if
forever.
Are people going to keep manufacturing? I mean, P80 owns the IP on those rails. If they go out of business, those rails aren't being made anymore. We've made generations of frames that use parts that we can't guarantee availability for in the future. It's very important because, I mean, like, just for like, I mean, the V2 Gigapack stuff, that was months of work. Like, I did that. That was possible because, like, I became basically a forgotten employee for a while. Like, my company was kind of like transferring operations to another state, and they didn't want to fire me because they wanted me to move to the new state, but they like didn't have anything for me to do. So I had basically months of time to make that my full-time job. And yeah, I mean, it's like 200 something files, and I had to develop the core technologies to like just make doing that type of stippling possible. That was like a big project, and it would be senseless for me to embark on it if the parts that you need to build those frames might someday just be off the market. Like, having those parts be open source is very important, just so these designs, can be built 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
And that's a really important point that Chairman's making here. We want, just as much as we want guns to be available for anyone forever, that also means that the parts to make the guns have to be commonly available and, I guess, accessible to make too. Which is why, spec gets defined, because otherwise, something proprietary like this locking block here is under lock and key forever. Just think of any of the companies that made guns, like cool guns, that went out of business, right?
Let's Lewis, what you're saying, yes, we can buy those parts right now. The question is, P80 might not exist as a company in a year. Even without the regulation, like, who knows? Like, one day they just might decide to close up shop. Like, they might decide not to sell those rails. Like, we can't be reliant on proprietary IP that companies may or may not actually provide parts for. It's a real blessing that we have people like Aves and Riptide and people who are making these open source products on a mass market scale. But if Aves exploded tomorrow and Riptide got swept away by some fucking tsunami, those parts are open source. Joe Schmo in his backyard can start whittling them out of fucking aluminum, and it's fine. Yeah.
That's a lot of what myself and the other manufacturers spend a lot of time. That's our contribution. Not only do we manufacture, but our other contribution is taking our knowledge of manufacturing and trying to develop the rail spec so that it is easy to manufacture. Because let's say that, like Chairman said, if I go out of business, if every rail manufacturer goes out of business tomorrow, somebody could pick up the spec and start making them. And we have ensured that they're easy enough to make that a tiny manufacturer could make them. The problem with manufacturing an exact clone, besides the IP, of the Polymer 80 Glock locking block rail combo is the fact that it's extremely difficult to machine.
Well, they
And
cast it, right?
theirs aren't even machined. They're metal injection molded. That's why a lot of people have problems with those front rails, because metal injection molding is a little inaccurate. It's hard to do. There's massive tooling costs associated with it. It's very difficult to get started. It's very difficult to create a repeatable part. Machining, on the other hand, if we break up that component into two pieces, locking block and rails, those individually are much easier to machine, and they're much easier to manufacture on a small scale if they're two separate parts. So it goes back to, we spend a lot of time developing a rail specification that truly is manufacturable. It's almost as easy as printing a frame is for a small manufacturer to start up and start making them, if the worst were to happen, and that be all of the existing manufacturers that work together disappear. So,
Right. And along that note too, these are designed so that, say, the unthinkable happens and you guys disappear. Joe Schmo can just take the spec, walk into a small on-demand or small local small town machine shop and just ask, hey, can you make me this part? He doesn't even have to make it himself. Right? And because the spec is published, the I guess the machinist just follows the instructions and does the press brake oriented the right way and just puts a little slab of aluminum in and just mills it out. And so that's why we want to define specifications, because we want repeatability and we want a baseline to adhere to.
And this is one of the things that, like, I don't like have a bone to pick with AWCY, but like I remember, kind of when the FMDA spec for the rails was starting to get popular, and they were like, oh, like we're gonna like make a competing spec. It's like just, it's really good to have like a spec doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be good enough, easy to manufacture, and widely adopted. If it doesn't have like glaring problems, like there's no point like fragmenting it into, I mean, like I could, I have things that I want to change. If you were like, hey, like Max, do you want to like change the P80 spec or the FMDA spec? I'd say, okay, well, yeah, like I'd like to put a little chamfer on the bottom of the rails, or whatever, like the block, so I can fit more ergonomics in the front of the frame. But like, the way to go about that isn't to like, oh, like I'm gonna make a competing spec. Like with the V3, like my initial plan for it was literally to use the existing FMDA spec and provide a printed jig so that you could shave off the amount of material that like I wanted shaved off for my particular, frame. Fragmenting the specification into like multiple competing specs just like is never a good idea.
Right. There's no reason to, I guess, if a spec is working, right? I agree with Chairman this. There's no reason to, I guess, create a competing spec, because the point of open source is to be able to improve and build upon everyone's contributions to make it, make it better. Here I don't know if you guys remember, this is my first block frame remix of FMDA's first rail spec design. It's the screw-in rails in the back. And this is mostly obsoleted now, and I have this just for historical and engineering reference. But we've basically gone from screw-in rails, which were known to eventually fail where the screws were threaded because they're screwed into in geometry, to improving towards drop-in insert rails. And I think this iteration, this continuous improvement is enabled only by collaboration rather than explicit competition. Yes, competition is fun, right? Who doesn't want to be the first to make something? Who doesn't want to make something groundbreaking, right?
Well, you know,
A
so
lot-
we were having this conversation on Ralph's show last night where it's like it is a competition. Like I want to make better frames than everyone else and like be like the king of the block frames, sure. But like I don't want to, you know, you don't get to that point by hoarding information and not collaborating. Like, you know, I share my textures, I share how I do the things that I do. Like I don't want to be like the guy who's the best because he hoards secret information. Like I just want to like have the skills to like do that. You know what I mean?
Right. And if you guys noticed in the mainstream gun industry, a lot of the cool stuff is tightly locked under lock and key. And you might have noticed that a lot of gun tech is pretty stagnant. I'm not trying to toot our horn. I genuinely think that all this engineering and development is, especially to make it accessible, it's truly on like the cutting edge. I guess most exciting thing that happened with guns in recent times. You know, we have cool things like, you know, Lago Alien or Hudson H9, but those are all, you know, proprietary and they're lock and key and stuff.
Open source always beats out the alternative given a little bit of time. Like, you know, we're in the first few years of like this being popular. You know, obviously it's been a thing since, you know, 2012, 2013, but this is kind of the beginning of like, I think the first big like expansion.
A renaissance of sorts.
Yeah, especially with P80s going away. Like, I think 2023 really will kind of be the year of 3D printed guns. At least in like the Glock space. Maybe P80's going away. Like the knock-on effects in the Glock industry is going to be insane. And the only way a lot of companies that are currently in business will stay in business is if 3D printing Glocks becomes more popular. Like all of these Glock aftermarket companies, they're not selling slides, barrels, kits, lower parts kits, whatever. They're not selling those to people who are just upgrading their factory Glocks. They're selling them to people building P80s. And it's a huge industry with a lot of companies, and the only way they survive is with 3D printing Glocks. So the incentives for the industry to hop on board with 3D printing are huge. And for a lot of these companies that are currently out there, it's literally life or death. They have to get on board with 3D printing Glocks.
It's join or die, right?
Yeah, there's, I mean, like, I've talked a lot in the past year about, like, how to get normies into 3D printing guns, you know, and it's always been something that I've approached as an industrial designer. Like, okay, there's affordances, like, what can 3D printing bring to the table that other types of manufacturing can't? And that's all well and good, and all of those things are still real and valid, but just outright banning the competition is a lot more effective.
I think the nice thing is that what 3D printing gives the layperson is it gives them something that they literally cannot buy. It gives them something that they have to print and make at home themselves. Something unique too, like for example, you know, Chairmanwon's stipples and ergonomic remixes. You can't just walk into, you know, Adventure Outdoors and pick one up and go home. You have to buy a printer, configure a printer, and then slice your file and have fun printing. And I think that's I guess one of the great things that you're doing, Chairman, is that you're helping to drive adoption by creating these unique works of art that the layperson can say, that's cool. I want it. I want one. I want to enjoy and see what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, like, nothing makes me happier than people getting into this just to, like, print one of my Glocks and then, like, getting involved with development, learning the CAD, like, getting involved in the community. You know, once you have the 3D printer, it's kind of addicting, like, right? You know, we've all experienced this. You get your first 3D printer and it's like, okay, well, I bought this for thing, but, like, oh, like, what can I print now? Like, you know?
Right.
Just getting that 3D printer set up and getting someone like who, you know, going from someone who doesn't print to someone who has a printer and knows how to use it. At that point, like, they're hooked. Like, they're gonna be building all kinds of crazy shit, you know.
And the printer, I actually foresee it being a household item in the near future. I see CAD being more accessible too. If you have something you got to fix around the house, like a broken washer dryer knob, right? You could download it or make one really quick and then print it and fix it in your house.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we really are coming into like a new generation of 3D printers as well. Not like people who 3D print, but like the actual hardware itself. I thought the Bamboo Labs thing was snake oil, but actually,
so bad.
Okay, so being at like 3D Print General's house and like watching him set it up and like seeing the first prints, like the LiDAR and just like the general like increase in the sophistication of the software, that printer was ready to go out of the box. Like it's $1,000 machine, but I mean, I'm using a machine from 2013 that was $2,000 that's essentially an Ender 3. So that machine might be $1,000 today, but like that's the closest to literally like buy an appliance, stick the filament in and just hit print. Like it just worked. And like it's self-diagnosed. It ran through a bunch of like shakedown on its own, just did the whole thing and started printing, and it was just magic. You know, if that's like the first of this new generation of printers, once printers like that, maybe not as fast, maybe not as, well, slickly manufactured, but like that easy. If that's what the future holds, yeah, I mean, it's a very bright future. That really was an eye opener to what the future of 3D printing looks like to me. Like, go and watch some videos on the Bamboo Labs printer. It really is like, it's the iMac of printers.
Wow. So, to plug our colleague here, 3D Print General, quick. 3D Print General has 3D printer review channel, and he actually is a fan of 3D printed guns too. And he has an excellent video out there right now on the Bamboo Labs machine that Chairman is talking about. We'll go down the questions really quick. Super exciting to see this continually wide adoption and ease of adoption too. Accessible is one thing with cheap printers, but the ease of using printers is about to is about to get even more people involved just because of how less taxing it is on the brain to learn and all that stuff.
A printer with no setup coming to market is huge. Like having something that prints out of the box. Like people will learn how 3D printers work once they've printed a few things, but being able to just print that first thing with minimal setup is huge.
Let's see here. Ryan Collins asks, railed version when? You're talking about like a railed version of the 43X?
Yeah, it's soon. It's next on my list. I have like the base CAD modeled in, and then I left for Idaho and got stuck here with COVID. So next few weeks, and it should be coming out.
Sweet. Will it be Picatinny rails or proprietary?
Picatinny.
Picatinny. Okay. Is it wide enough for that?
Yeah, it's just wide enough.
Oh wow. Okay. Curious. Let's see here. P. Jackie asks, hello everyone. Question to everybody. How do you see the future in 10 years for this hobby, including restrictions and developments? Oh boy. We'll let Avis take this first. What do you think where this will go? Where do you see your manufacturing? Where do you see the place of 3D printing guns go in 10 years, if we're still here?
If we're still here. I think it's an excellent question after the whole Bamboo Labs thing. If printers are, and I've even experienced this myself with some of the developments coming from the Ender 3. I mean, a couple of years ago when I started, it was an Ender 5 that took me a couple hours, 2, 3, 4 hours to put together. It was unpleasant, but I went through it, and you look at the transition to the Ender 3 V2s to now we run a lot of Anycubic Vipers. They're really just, put in a couple screws, plug it in, and it's already calibrated. It's good to go. So if you can get that last little step where anyone, my mom can take a printer out of a box and with the software that's easier to use, make a frame with no calibration, no anything. It's going to bring so many more people into the realm of 3D printed firearms that normally wouldn't have been, and it might spark that interest and get a lot more developers than we currently have. I think the biggest thing that we're probably going to see is a massive influx of new people trying to do something. That's, in my eyes, that's both a good and a bad thing. Usually when you get a lot of people who are really, really new and absolutely insist on making their own customized version of the thing, you get a lot of noise. And it's very, very hard to figure out who is actually the leader, who is doing the best job, who's doing, it's going to take a bit of filtering to try to guide new people down the right path so that they don't get turned away from the whole thing. Because as soon as new users have a problem, they kind of just shut down and they go, well, this didn't work, I'm not going to bother with it anymore. So it's going to be kind of a balancing act, but I think you're going to see a massive influx of new people and new developers.
I think that's what, social media is pretty good at. Like, I think Twitter is actually a pretty good platform for, amplifying like what's actually good and current and kind of like calling out, junk builds.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we keep getting kicked off Twitter.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Apparently, my Fed boys are going to bat for me because
our account has never actually been deleted, so we've lucked out. We don't usually post anything other than product updates, manufacturing, in stock alerts. So
Hoffman had a good question about open source CAD. I think it's pretty junk. I think OpenSCAD and the other open source CAD stuff out there right now isn't that good. Have you guys really tried any of it?
I tried FreeCAD. It was really hard to use. It's not user intuitive. But again, that's me coming from Fusion 360, which is, has years of experience of UX built on.
That's a good point. A lot of the open source CAD softwares, they're not parametric. They're not super defined. They're very buggy. So we're kind of reliant on things like the free version of Fusion 360. We're reliant on, what's the SolidWorks one?
Hobby license version?
No, it's the browser one. I forget.
I mean, not to advocate for software piracy, but all of these programs get cracked pretty fast. Like, even if these companies really wanted to crack down on the type of stuff we do, I don't know how they differentiate people. Even if they tried to like put some AI crap in there to like detect firearms, how would they go between what is legit, what's legitimate, what's not legitimate?
It's like the people that are demanding that the 3D printer manufacturers demand that they keep the printer from printing a firearm. How would they know? It's like a CNC machine. It's just following instructions. It does no thinking. It's impossible, really.
Those restrictions.
Kind of part of my point with new users, though, was I think that it's not really the guy who has just fired a gun before and knows how to set up the printer. I anticipate seeing a lot more CAD professionals coming in and using the skills that they already have. I guess my point wasn't necessarily new people with zero skills at all. It's like how Vin got into the whole thing. He already kind of knew CAD, to some degree. Yeah, you did. Don't lie. You pull in users with different skill sets. Perhaps in a year, there will be 5 Chairmanwons who are experts at creating textures and 3D models. And not to say that we don't like Chairman anymore, but there might be users that are experts in creating textured surfaces and models, and they bring something, game changing to the whole scene. That's one of the things that I see in the future is gaining the attention of more and more skilled people. So
people with different skill sets and their perspectives that they bring with them too.
Exactly.
The open source space.
Mm-hmm. There's so many people that are living inside of the closed source, working for employers that fully occupy their time. It's that little niche. It's that little thing where it's just easy enough for them to try it, and they go, wow, this is a lot of fun. I could totally change the models of this and make it exactly how I want. That's how I anticipate getting more and more developers from different backgrounds and that sort of stuff.
Well, I mean, that was kind of my story. Like, I was a CAD professional for a lot. I mean, I still am a CAD professional. But yeah, I mean, it was like I saw a Booligan build that I liked, and I was like, you know what? There's some stuff I want to change on that. And then, a year and a half later, here we are.
Gotcha. And I guess that also reinforces his point too. It's these cool, weird, zany builds that captivate the lay people to get them interested. From it starts with the esoteric stuff and then it goes into the common, I guess, common everyday use or unattainable stuff that people stick around for.
So is there really any big problem with big companies getting involved? Like, I don't see it.
No, I mean,
to
be honest, I don't see giant companies getting involved in an open source sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think that they're hoping that printed firearms continue on so that they can continue to sell slides and whatnot. But I don't think they're going to get their hands in there because I come from a background of massive manufacturing companies, injection molding and that. And if there's anything that they like, it's control over the process and the entire thing. So they may take open source aspects and develop their own products around it, but I think that they're not going to get their hands into the open source thing too much.
But I mean, is that really a problem? I guess
I don't think it would be a problem at all because realistically, it's been extremely tough for us as the community to get going. I mean, we, for example, started with a small Tormach CNC mill in our garage, and we've moved on to a bigger and bigger shop. If we had the attention of larger companies to try to implement our ideas or to try to make things more accessible, I don't see it being a bad thing.
Yeah, and Steve, I don't think what we're talking about here is putting stuff behind paywalls. That's not. That's not. I don't think that's the discussion we're having. My stuff will never be behind a paywall. I do not. Even if I could make a little bit of money in the short term by charging for designs, it would destroy me in the long term. It would destroy any goodwill I have. I mean, look at Black Lotus. Look at how much shit they catch for doing that. It's not. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about P80s are going away. A lot of 80% stuff is going away. A lot of the current gun industry is founded on selling parts for products that aren't going to exist in a year. What especially, I know Glock, so we were talking about this earlier, but there's tons of manufacturers out there for Glock aftermarket that will only stay in business if 3D printing Glocks gets more popular. It is do or die for some of these companies. They might have been reticent to support 3D printing in the past. if they have a gun to their head, what do they do? So, yeah, I mean, I think we will start seeing in this next year a lot more companies putting out their own models. I wouldn't be surprised if we see, the Shadow Systems, 3D printed Glock, with build kit, and some kind of customer support, who knows what these companies will actually do, but some of them need this to stay in business.
I think a good crossover would be like automotive companies. Automotive companies will actually publish certain aspects of it's behind a closed system. You have to sign up for it. But a lot of automotive companies will actually publish things like internal dimensions of certain components. So say companies want to develop some aftermarket part for an F-150. You can actually go to Ford and get technical information and drawings of the truck that pertains to the component you're trying to make, and they'll give you that information. If we could get that information from a lot of traditional firearm developers, say you got the model for a Shadow System slide and you managed to make a frame that perfectly blended the design of the Shadow System slide into an open source frame, it might be possible that they would be interested in doing that, because then they sell more slides.
We
slides individually, but
we really don't know what this is going to look like. But I mean, it's the next year is going to be incredibly interesting, because these companies are going to have to make these decisions, and without P80s, I mean, Shadow Systems doesn't survive as a company. Safari Precision doesn't survive as a company. Like, they have to get more people 3D printing Glocks. What does that look like? What type of support does that really mean? Like, does that just mean that they boost the signal? Does that mean that they make their own files? Well, I don't know what that actually looks like, but, I can guarantee you that these are the conversations that are being had at these companies. Because what other choices do they have?
Well, I think you're going to see a lot of these companies that make, say, like Zafiri, where their primary thing is just slides. I don't think P80 is going away. P80 spent a lot of money on developing.
No, they'll sell serialized handguns. Sure.
That's exactly it. They'll sell a serialized frame. I think that is the traditional, that's the traditional low resistance path that I think a lot of these 80% companies are going to take. Is just take our existing product line. It's probably, in my opinion, what's going to happen is they're just going to develop serialized frames, and then the 3D printing thing is going to be an afterthought, an add-on. Because I think the traditional industry still views this as a tiny thing,
sure.
It's an outlier group,
I totally agree with that. But what do you actually? So injection molding a frame is not a cheap endeavor. Obviously P80 is already there. People who are already doing that are already there. PSA has already eaten the market on the very low cost, Glock. P80 can sell P80 branded full Glocks and probably eke out enough to survive as a shell of itself. That's fine. But, these other companies that aren't already tooled up to make frames, okay, so I don't think it's an attractive prospect to say, okay, we're about to lose almost all of our sales. And so what we should do is a big capital expenditure to capture a very tiny portion of a market that is already dominated by ZEV at the high end and PSA at the low end, where we can't really differentiate ourselves. While it is the path of least resistance in one way, it's also a crowded market. And yeah.
It would also be a betrayal of what these companies were initially founded to do. It would, like you said, it'll be a shell of itself. I am
Timbers. That's
hopeful
what
in-
I'm saying. Sorry.
Right. The hope I see is that while they might turn to serializing their own frames as like a short gap measure, I actually foresee this going the path of the, I guess, the software market model today, where back in the olden days, these big legacy companies have like Oracle or Microsoft, they have everything under lock and key. But now to survive, they have to turn to embracing open source. My hope is that the gun industry, as the snake basically constricts on it, um, they turn to more decentralized, more open source forms of development and increased adoption that way. We've seen a lot of open source tech become incredibly adopted simply because it's free and accessible. The companies that are backing it are not selling the product; they're letting the product sell itself by leaving it for free. What they're selling is the support behind it. What they're selling is the accessories that tack onto it. So, I I concur that if these companies want to survive, they would start looking at adopting open source um, alternatives and open source, I guess, solutions to the proprietary offerings. We're running a little behind on the comments here. I'm still looking at like 20 comments from 20 minutes ago. I want to answer you guys questions and stuff. Let's see here. I was wondering, EvoSD, when I said PAD Rails, alone now see what you're saying makes perfect sense about being open source and DIY. Yeah, and I'm glad that we understand that the importance of being open source and accessible to everyone. Let's see here. EvoSD asks, any chance to get Chairman textures on Vin's M&P frames? Ooh, what say you, Chairman, to this?
I'll teach you how to do it, but
Hey. So if you guys didn't know, my M&P frames have also been released too. I did a very quiet release on that. You get everything from the long slides and stuff. Now I'll point.
But no, my oh.
Right up there, you guys can see it in the upper right.
My general kind of like guiding.
There. Go ahead, Chairman.
So my general kind of like guiding light for myself as a designer is, at the moment, I only work on things where there's actual like real aftermarket, like, it's not parts kits. You can go buy like full new production aftermarket, and it's not, constrained by like, oh, this might, we might run out of parts kits for that. The SIG stuff is very interesting to me. The obviously Glock. I have some AR projects coming up, but Vin has the gift of being able to look at a parts kit and like design a frame for it very quickly that actually works. I'm not engineer guy like that. I'm take thing that already works and like make it look and feel good. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Kevin Anderson here says the aviation club you can join comes with a free trial of the hobbyist Solidworks. Oh, that's a good pro tip. Something to mention too is if you are a student, you actually get Fusion 360 for free as long as you're a student. So something to keep in mind too if you're still in college. Let's see here.
Just pirate SolidWorks. It's not hard.
Capitalize on that .edu email address for as long as possible.
Yeah, you're paying a lot for that piece of paper, so squeeze every drop of water out of that. Let's see here. Why open source when there's Fusion 360 or an expensive version of SolidWorks? So ideally, you want to be as independent as possible against having, I guess, less reliant on things that if they disappear would end you. While I would like for a open source CAD editor that works really well, Fusion is most accessible. The only thing I don't like about Fusion is that it's very cloud dependent. It's a something as a service, and usually when something is as a service, you're paying for access to it. You don't actually own it. They could take it away at any minute for any reason they want to. The whole private company stuff. Let's see here. CAD software is very easy. You can learn basic in less than 30 minutes with the right tutorial. Okay. Let's see here. I think more people should give free CAD a shot. I might come back to it very soon. Like I said, I want there to be open source solutions to these things.
I've used Solid Edge every day for 10 years. Like, I'm never moving away from Solid Edge.
This is what I worry about. 3D printed guns going mainstream. Big companies getting involved.
That's the comment that I like. That's what I was
Yeah.
kind of responding to.
Gotcha. Okay. Big companies involved isn't a bad thing. It's their support of the local also. Okay. Would you prefer your Chairmanwon? Okay, I think you also talked about that too.
Yeah, I'm never putting myself behind a paywall. That's insane.
Yeah, same here. So on that note, if someone did want to, I guess, tip you or send you something, is there any avenue they can do that to send you like?
I put my crypto wallets in the readmes and on my Odyssey pages, but I mean honestly, I work a good full-time job. I make enough money. This is just something I do because I want Glocks that I want frames that I like. It's very gratifying that like my hobby is kind of self-supporting now. Like I get free 3D printers, I get free, gun parts. What else could I really want out of it? My goal, yeah, I get free stuff. My goal one day is to be able to like switch from, my current day job to, doing this full-time professionally. But I don't know, like I think the model where people like make designs that like need hardware kits and then sell those hardware kits, like, Digital Nimbus, I think that's a great model. You design a cool thing that people want, you sell the hardware kits for a good price while releasing the open source specs for them. That's a really cool model for monetization that I think is kind of like the way forward for a lot of designers, if they want to make money doing this. For me, I'd like to make this my job eventually, but I don't want to e-bag and take money, I don't want to become like, it's nice to have, money is always nice, it's always nice to have money, but like, I feel like it's very easy to become like a DSP or like, just like some kind of person who like is known for just like I don't want e-bagging is very distasteful. I don't like it. I don't, if I want money, I'll sell a thing. Yeah, I really don't like e-bagging. I don't know.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that makes sense. I suppose that if you're fortunate enough to be in a situation where you don't have to depend on income to fund your hobby, I guess that's more power to you on that. P. Jackie does ask, HECast mentioned the FGC9 project was really expensive to develop. It's an easy way to find and help fund hybrid designs. Usually I look for reputable devs. Let's see, on the Gala, people who have let's say demonstrated material progress on what they're working on, and usually you can just ask them, hey, what's your crypto, what's your cash app? Most devs don't e-bag either. I concur with Chairman, but they do leave the option to contribute and give if someone did want it to.
Yeah, listen, if someone asks me for my cash app or says, hey, what's your crypto wallet, it's yeah, here it is, and thank you so much, I appreciate it. But I definitely don't like, if someone asks, it's one thing. Just like beating people over the head with like, hey, donate money, like, I'm not a fucking Twitch thought, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Oh man, I joke with my colleagues that if they ever fired me, I would open a OnlyFans, so I tell them to keep me employed. They want to prevent that horror from happening. I'm not going to open OnlyFans, by the way. That was a joke.
I'd subscribe.
Oh my gosh, it's just pictures of guns. Like, this is something that be my OnlyFans. Matthew Breuer said, if someone did sold magazine files, someone would take the $5 and release it for free on the torrent. We have seen this with some designs that were never publicly tested and were just, how do I say, they were, I guess, published first from a very, like, not well-known group first, and then the first thing they did was offered for sale. We have seen this happen once. Questionable, yeah, but I mean, it's the internet. You know, these files don't have DRM. Think of this. So I mean, it's expected that this would happen, which is why I think the model of, I concur with Chairman on this, the model of just selling, make things exclusive is a little, I guess, old-fashioned and I guess outdated for today's, you know, computer and technology where you can just infinitely duplicate things without.
It's never made any sense to me because it's like, okay, like, what would I get out of selling files? I'd get a small amount of revenue until, you know, people were just sharing them, and then I'd get a bunch of hate, and like, you know, it wouldn't be worth it. Like it
reduced adoption too. Your adoption is wide.
Yeah, it's just it's never been something that I've even, you know, considered for a moment, because like on the face of it, it just like, I mean, even if I was totally unprincipled and just out for a buck, it would still be the wrong strategy to make a buck. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If I was that person, I would have like gotten to 5,000 Twitter followers and like launched a merch store. You know?
Right.
Like that's how you do it. You don't, you know, you don't get there by just like selling files.
Right. Or becoming like a political commentator and then opening a Substack.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see here. Does open source make money in support rather than product? Yes. You see this a lot in the software industry. Let's see here. Lewis says we need to keep developers happy and reward them for the time and effort it takes to make these models, so they have an incentive to continue to improve. That's why I bought Vin's Patreon. Thanks, Lewis. I think I did send you a message on there, so check your inbox if you did get a message from me. There's been people I sent messages to about drawings that I was going to send out. I haven't got a response yet. I'm not sure if you're one of them or not. Let's see here. Free with the option of donate makes loot. That's true. I'd say for the increased adoption, free is the best way to go. Just get more eyes on it and make people more aware of what's going on, what you're making and stuff. Svendy says, change to the market or the market forgets that company naturally. Let's see here. Times change, people will claw to stay alive. Yeah. I mean, that's it's all about figuring out how to stay relevant, right? These companies want to be relevant. They have to, you know, especially after like P80s go away or 80 print go away, you know, turning 3D printing, like we said.
Well, I mean, listen, and I can say that like the gun companies know we exist, and they are looking at what we're doing. You know, like I wasn't at NRA show the other day, like just like jerking off, like that. You know, I was there talking to companies about 3D printed blocks, like what they can do to support the community, like what, you know, like what like the give and take can be between like, because you know what I really want is some of these companies to really like provide proprietary information or information that's currently proprietary that like we can build on top of, you know. For one example, like, you know, Lone Wolf currently makes frames that take mag wells and, you know, back straps. Why aren't they publishing the specs for that? Why aren't they giving people like the opportunity to just like whip up their own and, you know, put them on there? Very simple things that companies should be doing anyways that they just don't really think about. They know we're out there and they know what's coming with this. I think they're still kind of processing, but like we might be kind of small in the sense of like, yeah, sure, like the P80, the number of people who builds P80s, you know, dwarfs the number of people who 3D print blocks. But in the, you know, rent-free headspace of these companies, they know about us. You know, when I went to the High Point booth to, you know, yell at them about parts kits, they were bitching about Freeman and Low Point Goat. Like, they knew who those people were, you know?
And I wonder if these legacy companies' aversions to just selling the parts or focusing on open source and do-it-yourself guns is I guess they don't want the how do I say it, the enmity from like regulatory bodies and such, which is why they're kind of like avoiding the discussion topic.
High Point is just run by boomers.
Oh,
You know, a lot of these companies already have taken the, like, any company that has done P80s or, like, you know, 80% anything, like, they're already there. They've already taken the pill. So, like, you know, Lone Wolf, for instance, happy to support the stuff we do because they already sell the Freedom Wolf. Like, they've already taken the step of saying, okay, people are going to build these themselves, and, like, we aren't really going to be able to control if they do a good job or not. Like, you know, maybe they fuck it up. So yeah, there's companies out there who have already gotten in the correct headspace through years of, you know, this P80 market being a thing. And then there's companies like High Point that, you know, from their perspective, they were never involved in the P80 stuff. And now Twitter is mad at them because, you know, they're not selling parts kits to 3D printed gun nerds. Which, you know, from their perspective is like, okay, like, yeah, like, where did this come from? Like, what's going on? From a lot of other companies' perspectives, this is just a kind of a natural evolution of a product segment that they willingly entered over the past 5 years. So, you know, it's
Good.
yeah, I mean, oh, sorry, Evil SD. Yeah, I mean, Lone Wolf, definitely. You know, they've been very responsive. They haven't, you know, publicly really, like, done much yet, but, like, I'd say as far as, like, big Glock aftermarket people who are really paying attention to the 3D space and having serious internal conversations about getting more involved, yeah, I'd say Lone Wolf.
I think there's definitely a cost benefit analysis happening in these boardrooms, because the minute that Glock starts to, you know, work with the P80s, the 80%, the 3D printing guys, you catch there's a third party in here besides the DIYers, the big time manufacturers that most people don't take into consideration. It's the federal government. The minute that these large companies start to entertain 3D printing, you catch the ire of the feds, and they may use your newfound interest in the DIY community as reasons to give you a harder time when it comes to selling your traditional firearms. I think it was earlier this year, Jimenez, the firearm manufacturers,
Jimenez, whatever you would call it.
whatever they were, the Jennings, the high points of the 1980s, they still existed as a company, and the ATF shut them down because there was just too much, in their eyes, trafficking activity that they were participating in, too many traces, too many of their guns were found at crime scenes and causing problems that they were now in the radar of people who want to shut them down. And I think a lot of these bigger companies, that's the apprehension that they have to working with smaller organizations that are doing more fringe things that, you know, they directly want to regulate, and they would rather, stay away from it, you know.
That's kind of what I was getting at with people who have already taken the 80% pill. Like, you know, all of these companies that made, you know, 80% frames. I mean, like, Lone Wolf never submitted theirs for an ATF letter. Mm-hmm. They just aped what was already approved for P80. These guys have already kind of jumped off the diving board. So those guys are like the easiest ones to work with because they already have their foot in the water. They're already in the game. They're already fighting the ATF and like actually saying like, okay, like we're gonna like fucking take what we can and give nothing back. Like,
yeah, I think my point is people will sit around and circle jerk the idea of why won't Polymer or why won't High Point sell parts kits. It's literally because they just don't want to. They just don't want to take. They view it as a risk, probably. I can't really say, but they view it as a risk of, you know, they're already selling a cheap firearm that gets traced all the time. They don't want to add more reasons for the ATF to come and say, "Hey, what's the deal with these parts?"
Oh yeah, and like don't get
finding these.
Don't get me wrong. Like I'll drag them on Twitter all the time.
Oh yeah.
I don't think their stance is objectively unreasonable. Like they're not. You know, they have no obligation to us.
Yeah.
We have a catch-22 of sorts. I guess not really catch-22. The gun companies that are focused on the consumer market, they don't want to catch the enmity of like the ATF. They don't want to bring more attention to themselves and what they already are facing. Whereas the gun companies that have like, you know, government contracts and sell to larger groups and entities, they don't care for a consumer market. So why would they engage? Why would they take a risk on upsetting the status quo?
Sure, so this is exactly the point I was getting at earlier.
Yep.
That's why this next year is going to be so crazy. Because yes, the big gun companies don't care. But there's this whole industry that grew up around P80s. This entire, you know, P80's been this massive watering hole for aftermarket Glock, where all of these companies that, you know, I mean, like, think about these companies, like, you know, these were tiny custom shops that did a slide here and there, you know, did like competition Glocks. And now they are, you know, selling shit tons of parts and slides and stuff to support, you know, P80 builds. Like, this watering hole has gotten crowded and it's about to dry up. And there's another watering hole over here called 3D printed Glocks. And a few companies are drinking from it and doing a good job. You know, JSD 1776 has just walked up to it. Companies are starting to drink from it. You know, Lone Wolf is over at one watering hole, like keeping an eye on the other one. The moment that watering hole dries up, though, what happens?
Right.
You know, what?
We have to start making Glock slides.
Yes. I
Hey,
mean, yes.
I'm working on it, all right? What's this comment got pinned here, Vin? Question?
I'm going to take a peek real quick.
Yeah. Jackie asked
Possibility for Tech 9 top receiver. You should let us finish the Mach 11 upper receiver first, and then we might look at that Tech 9 stuff. But it's Mac world here right now. So
dang, I never saw you as an Apple fan. But
not that kind of Mac.
Yeah, but Tech 9s are also hell to assemble. You need a slave pin to put the trigger together, and it's I hate assembling my Tech 9 so much.
I've never actually taken one apart to be honest.
Oh,
I've never had the displeasure. Yeah.
Pain and suffering.
I imagine.
Yeah. Oh man. Let's see here. Has ATF ever messed with any of the small parts kit sellers? Richard Stevens. I don't know actually.
Are they referring to me?
I guess you or other like cottage industry people.
I mean, JSD, sure, but
well, JSD
that's
because
true.
they're doing the 80% stuff, but we actually have our FFL, and we've never had any problems. Nobody's ever given us a hard time about anything. So.
Here.
Aves, you're making Mac parts now?
Well, we're making the Mac bolt. I don't have one here, but actually, yeah, we got this one's
Ooh.
cere coated, but
Oh, no shit.
Mech.
Wow.
That looks badass. I had
Yeah,
no
we
idea
just-
you were doing.
Yeah, we just shipped the first batch of them last week. I think we
Oh, shit.
offered some.
Congrats,
And then,
man.
Thanks. We should have a few more of the bolts early next week, and then we're working on the uppers too. So we've already got the experience with the sheet metal stuff. So we're milling trunnions right now, and then we'll be beta testing some upper receiver assemblies here pretty quick. But the bolts have been working good for the supply of uppers that are floating around out there in the world. We're trying to help fill those with bolt assemblies, and then we'll be moving on to full bolt and upper receiver with barrel assemblies, and hopefully we can start to see as many Mac Daddies and Mac and Cheeses as we see Glock frames.
Seriously, I mean, I've thought for a long time, like, you know, the Mac stuff really should be like is kind of the default now for pistol caliber carbines. So, seeing like more new production Mac stuff, you know, that's huge.
Yeah, we've gone through and we've tried to. Unfortunately, we suffer from the same problem that everybody else has, and that's finding parts. But we don't really need them to put together a full gun. We need them to sample and check dimensions and see what exactly is out there so that our components fit with other stuff. And, you know, it's hard to get a lot of these old legacy Mac 11, Mac 10 guns, parts from other parts from other manufacturers. It's really kind of hard, but we've gone through the Mac platform with a fine-tooth comb, measured as many parts as we could, and we're trying to make something that's as cross-compatible with other legacy parts kits and new manufacturer parts as possible. So,
Shit, I might have to make a Mac frame.
you might have to. You might have to. Because you know what? It meets your demands of it's got to be parts that are currently produced. So,
Well, I never got into it.
well, maybe now you will.
I'm thinking.
P. Jackie asked question to Aves. Will the Mac have a more modern threaded barrel?
Yeah, so we don't have the capacity to make barrels ourselves right now, but we're working with a couple of different companies that are going to do a more bull barrel. Probably one of the biggest concerns that we've ever had with the Mac uppers that exist now is it's such a super low profile barrel that screwing on and seating a suppressor doesn't really work super great. So we're looking at something that has bigger diameter for the suppressors to seat against. But we're looking at all sorts of different options barrels. The traditional 4.5 or 5-inch barrel that's in the Mac normally, rifle length barrels, something in between, so you can actually put a stock easily on Mac Daddy stuff. Yeah, I mean, now that we're kind of getting into it, there'll be all sorts of options that we'll be able to do. So,
Ooh, that sounds like a very exciting.
Oh man,
exciting
so
world ahead.
were you guys there at all for the roast last night? Evil
No.
SD. I was about to tell the story, and then my internet died before we went live. But oh no, poor Digital Nimbus.
Uh-oh,
He-
what happened?
He was putting out a new Invader pack, so like some updated Invader stuff. Like it was a whole new pack. He had a really slick animation done for it, like a whole teaser trailer. It looked fantastic. So we decided to watch it on stream. And, maybe 45-second long little trailer. It gets to the end where we announce the name of the pack. Motherfucker called it Stormfront.
Stormfront?
Stormfront.
Like Star Wars?
Like the white nationalist group.
I've
You got-
never heard of that.
Dude, what?
Never heard of that.
It's like the biggest, like Stormfront is like the biggest white nationalist forum on the internet.
Wait, did he just like not know?
He
that
just didn't
gained-
know. He just didn't know. And you guys obviously didn't know either.
Yeah,
And-
like this is very. That's a really niche thing. Like,
It might be a little niche here, but like Vice would make the connection. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
NBC would make the connection.
oh my goodness.
He he renamed it and re-uploaded the video pretty quickly, but oh my god, I'm just glad we caught it on stream. It was
Gosh. Wait, hang on. Richard Stevens asks, has anyone tried working on delayed blowback mechanism into the map upper? I know that will be a major undertaking, but I think it would be worthwhile.
how would
You're
you
not
even
putting
do
magnets
it?
on there? Are you?
Magnets.
How do they work?
The funny thing about the Mac is that you would have to make some very, very major modifications, but there's a giant flat area on the side of the bulb. There's a giant flat area on the top of the bulb. This side's pretty much occupied with the ejection and all that. But there's surface area on this that you could probably do all kinds of interesting prototype things. Delayed blowback, different recoil methods. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing some of the. I've heard that people are working on printable uppers for the Mac platform. It'll be interesting to see what gets incorporated into those. Maybe magnets. I don't know. We'll see.
I feel like you could probably fit roller delayed in there somehow, but
Yeah, I mean, you're asking for HK quality in what really is it's designed to be a throwaway gun, in my opinion. It was really designed to just be as cheap to manufacture and as easy to manufacture as possible, a lot like the rails. And you're asking to implement a feature that's very, very, it requires a lot of precision, I guess you could say, into a very imprecise thing. I mean, it's literally a square. It's literally a square that smashes forward and backwards. I mean,
I want you to make it a fancier square though. Like, what the fuck?
I'm trying to make it as fancy of a cube as possible.
Give me fancy square obvious. Like, what the fuck?
Well, I suppose this is it goes back to this point too. Just establishing that baseline, that specification to have a known good baseline to go off of.
Well, yeah, that's just it. It's trying to make that perfect baseline as available as possible so that other people with more time and ideas can try to implement their own thing. It's tools for them to use to try to develop. So we'll see.
Sweetness. All right, let's see here. So we're at the hour and 48 mark, almost 2 hours now. I guess unless you guys have anything else we want to plug your socials and stores and whatnot, and we'll wrap up.
Yeah, yeah, that's good timing. I told my family I would only yell in the tiny log cabin about 3D printed guns for about 2 hours. So they're giving me the looks.
All right, Chairman. What parting words you want to share with us? Any places we can find you? Any exciting stuff?
Nothing crazy. Just same stuff I always do. Just happy to make it home to San Antonio and recover from my COVID. So I love you all, and I'm just happy that this 43X is finally out.
Sweet. All right, thanks, Chairman. Avis, anything for us?
Just whenever you're ready, you're gonna try out that 43X frame. Come get your rails, avesrails.com. We got a ton of them in stock, ready to go, ready to ship. You find us on Twitter, Instagram, all the usual places. Links on our website. It's been a pleasure helping out, making a platform for everybody to build off of, and yeah, appreciate the business.
Sweet. Thanks, Avis. You guys know
Thank
where
you.
to find me. I'm on Twitter, WinKVVN. On Instagram, I'm 3D Printing Fun Lover 5000 because my Instagram has been kicked off so many times. If I lose my personal Instagram, that'd be a little bit of a disaster. So, yeah, find me on there. I have a shopping list for 3D printed stuff down in the link below. VinceToolbox.com. You basically get the whole list of things that I keep literally at my workbench, like a carving knife that I actually use every day for 3D printing and stuff. So just a list of accessories and whatnot that I recommend and such. When you buy from there, I get a small cut from affiliate linking, but it's just a handy resource I point people to when they ask questions. And I guess, yeah, you like merch and stickers too, have them on Control Q site as well. So I guess that's it, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Feel free to send any questions you have to me on like Twitter or Instagram. I do read my email, so you find my email, you get a guaranteed response. DMs and stuff do end up in the message request pile, so those I do go through and comb whenever I get a chance to sit down and look at them. Anyways, that's it. Thanks for stopping by. Go get the files from the catalog. The 43 and the 43X is both released and on there now with Chairman stipples and such. So, yeah. All right, guys, we'll call it right here. Take care.